fucking diseased, corrupt temple down on your head. It's gotta be biblical.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you today. And thank you so much for joining us in this unusual time that we're going live today. We have an amazing guest today. This is actually our very first Respect show since taking over from Mark Abrahams. It's actually the fourth that we've done on Mondays, but the first that Stu and I have officially taken over the show. And we're just so blessed and happy to have with us today Rachel Vaughan from Down Under in Australia. Stu, good morning. Rachel, good evening. Actually, Stu, good afternoon. Apologies. How are you guys today?
Yeah, very well. It's just turned afternoon here, and I was just saying the early start for all the people in America, because it's 7 a.m. for you there. It's just gone lunchtime here, and it's 8:30 p.m. for Rachel in Australia. And we've done a few shows with these before with Ricardo, basically, so we know,
Yeah, I think the last time we did an Australian show, Stu, it was like super late for you. So now we're going super early for me. But Rachel, thank you so much. And thanks for being here. I thought that I would just give our audience a little bit of your background, which is, to say the least, compelling and unbelievable. So Rachel Vaughan is a child protection advocate, whistleblower, researcher, and childhood survivor of satanic ritual abuse and MK Ultra mind control, including MK Ultra psychic theta programming throughout childhood. In 2018, Rachel began participating in interviews, roundtables, and public speaking engagements in her fight for justice against her childhood abusers and the authorities who refused to investigate. This included proving the existence of tunnels and bunkers she was sex trafficked through as a child in Adelaide, South Australia. In 2024, after 18 years of campaigning, Rachel was finally awarded victim of crime compensation from Australian authorities for some of the abuse her father perpetrated against her in childhood. Despite this, the remains of several of Rachel's mass-murdering satanic father, Alan Maxwell McIntyre's child victims, have not been exhumed from two of his former properties by police. Rachel is certain this is due to the fact that her father was an ASIO, Secret Service operative, working on behalf of the globalist order. She often refers to her father as Australia's Epstein. Rachel suffers from diagnosed severe PTSD as a result of her nightmare childhood. Despite this, she is an eternal optimist and believes that we are immortal souls having a human experience who can attain peace and success despite our trauma. As co-founder of movement Lay Love Down, Rachel teaches others to utilize the Earth's ley lines to win the energetic war by balancing out the nefarious activities of satanic ritual abuse in the ley crossing points by collectively expressing joy in those spaces. Rachel passionately maintains that the current ascension process of Earth, fueled by humanity's collective spiritual awakening, is facilitating a change from the satanic system of enslavement into a world where we can truly be free to fulfill our soul purpose, creating a paradigm on Earth we can be proud to pass on to younger generations. Her website is sixth, with the number 6, sixthscience.com. Wow.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me, guys. Lovely to be here.
It's an honor to have you on. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, and thank you for the work that you continue to do now. I guess the where maybe we could start, Stu, unless you have a different, I'm curious to understand how you got to this point, because clearly your childhood was fraught with every unimaginable thing possible. And then today, to look at you, you're out there campaigning and championing, for people to understand what's really going on, and just so amazingly how you're putting out this positive sense of how we combat it with love and the positive. So we're just going to kind of turn it over to you to tell us your story and how you got here.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there were many attempts on my life, including medical experimentation, and I was used in pretty horrible ways. But one of the best ways to get back at those who harmed me is to be thriving, and so that's what I've done. I've ensured that I have gone through my healing, and I'm at the other point now, or the other side of it, so I can actually start to help other people heal and help the world heal, basically, just through very simple things like a lot of other people are doing, teaching people how important the ley lines are. So people go out and do these horrific rituals where they unalive children and animals or adults in the crossing point of ley lines. And they do it out in the open, and they have to have everybody stitched up. They have to have the judiciary and the police and the parks officers and anybody who might be called out, ambulance people. They have to have everybody organised and controlled so they can do these things outside in the open, where they can be filmed, caught, and that shows you how important these spaces are. So where the ley lines cross in areas of nature, that's where it's easiest for these, I call Satanist creatures because they've lost their humanity, but where these creatures can call up otherworldly interdimensional entities like demons. And they do this for power and to be able to control others. But what they actually end up doing is getting a monkey on their back that they can't get rid of. It's really bizarre. Obviously, a lot of people watching your program would have heard about 33rd degree Masons, that they get to a certain level and they've got this, they sell their soul. My father actually tried to get me to sell my soul when I was 5 in a ritual where he married me. And I still have the little bracelet that he gave me that's tungsten or some sort of weird metal that's never rusted. He said it was off a tool ship. But I muttered under my breath as he was doing this, I give my soul to Jesus. And I'm not a full-on Christian, but I even knew at 5, I did not want to be anything like him. I knew Jesus was good, and I wanted to go to the light, and I didn't want to have any part in the control structure or the power that he was offering me.
Yeah. Can I ask you one quick question before you go on? How did you know at such a young age, with all of this satanic evil stuff that was happening from the time you were, I'm sure a baby and before, that Jesus, how did Jesus show himself, or how did you feel him to know enough at 5 that that's where your heart and soul was and not with this other side?
So I had an experience, and I'm not going to say it was Jesus that came to me, but I had an experience where I was trafficked through a lot of tunnels. There were mandated 1938 government mandated tunnels. There were telecommunications tunnels and water tunnels. And my father would put me into one of the water tunnels that were walkable. There were little adjunct tunnels that he used to shove me into, and then close it off with a, I guess it would be like a barrel that you put electrical conduit on, because he worked at Telecom. I'm pretty sure it was from there. That was a telecommunications company. And I would be in the dark, very, very cold, very, very frightened. I wouldn't know how long I'd been there because it was so dark and there was no time keep, you know, I'd never watch or anything like that, or no light to see it by. And on one particular occasion, a light just appeared out of nowhere. I couldn't find a source for it. I had an experience later in life as an adult where a light filled my bedroom as well and freaked my partner out. No source. I woke up to him searching the room, looking for the light source. So as a child in this tunnel, so it visited me again as an adult, but as a child in this tunnel, this light came in and it was conscious. It warmed me up. That was the most important thing. I was freezing cold. I must have called out for help or something. And that consciousness explained to me some of the things that I was going to go through and what I would actually be doing as an adult. And I couldn't put it into words. I was too small. I was about 3. But just to put it into context, when my father would normally come and get me out of that tunnel, I'd be desperate and I'd be hugging him and kissing him, and he was my savior. On this occasion, he came to get me out and I fought him to stay in the tunnel. And that was the last time he put me in there.
Wow. Wow, you showed him.
So I don't know. I think it was from watching movies. I'd seen Jesus in movies. The only way, because I certainly didn't get any Christian instruction as a child, I got the opposite. But I knew that that was the direction I wanted to go in. I did not want to be anything to do with this because it was hurting animals, and I'd already seen enough by 5 to know I didn't want anything to do with what he was doing and what my family was doing.
And may I ask you where your mom was in all this? I don't know if I understand the way this is done or the way they, take you, but your mom.
So my mum, I'm 4th generational abuse trauma. My father's grandfather was a very, very high level Mason. So my father was 3rd generation. I'm 4th generation. My mother was also from a very traumatic lineage. And I think he hand sort of picked her basically for various reasons. She was very easy to hypnotize. He was an adept hypnotist. His later partner was, his best friend was. So he could just click his fingers at her and say a few words and she'd be under. And just completely somewhere else in a trance. And there's a lot of the cults that abuse children use hypnotism. They do this, and there were others also who could use these techniques. So it was pretty much throughout the cult. My main MK Ultra programmer and abuser studied at Sydney University under a woman who was later named by another survivor. She studied under her, so she was an MK Ultra programmer. So my abuser and handler studied under the same woman. Sydney University is known for it. So it's a lot of survivors who've said that they were abused through various people in that university. Yeah.
I just want to say a couple of points to that. We've spoke to Ricardo Bosi before, and he calls them the Masonic filth. There is such a Mason problem out there that we know Australia is really, really bad, and you've been fighting against this system for a long, long time. And I just want to say, whatever anyone's religious affiliation of what they believe, is the fact that the cabal and the dark side torment Jesus so much in everything you do. It makes you believe that this has to be a real thing. And a lot of people go away in Jesus' name. They've seen UFOs or other things like that, and these spirits just tend to disappear when you speak his name out loud. So there's definitely something into this, and everyone needs a relationship with whatever higher power they believe. But just one thing as well, when you said I call them creatures, right? Yeah. I think that's perfect. It might be offensive to some creatures, but it's perfect because you don't know what these people, you don't know what to call them, do. Serpents, I call them a lot of time, but creatures, I think, is absolutely perfect.
Yeah, but they've lost their humanity. They don't deserve the human moniker. Yeah.
So do you just want to just go into your history and just, take
we're sorry for cutting you off. There's so many questions along the way.
That's fine. That's fine. So for those who don't know me, I was brought up in South Australia in a place called Adelaide. Adelaide actually means aristocracy. And there is so much in the mainstream about who Adelaide's aristocracy really is. So Colonel William Light was our Surveyor General, and Colonel William Light, William, the will of I am, the will of God, light bearer. So there's a Luciferian connection to Colonel William Light. And he actually set out Adelaide like an Illuminati pyramid. And if people want to see that on my Rumble channel, look up my name, and I've got a video on there called Symbolism Will Be There Down For, where I've actually pointed out all the symbolism in Adelaide's streetscape. And I think it's really important for people to see that, because right in the centre of the capstone is a reptilian eye, which is Victoria Square. I am not joking. It's literally shaped like a reptilian eye. And they say that that's a nod to the rainbow serpent. So they're not even trying to hide it. But if you look at the way that it's all structured, it's one big Illuminati pyramid with the eye at the top, and it's reptilian. So this is where I grew up. So I grew up in a suburb called Edwardstown on a street called Macklin Street. The house had a hidden cellar. My father built the house himself. He built the hidden cellar. It's not on the records that there's a hidden cellar there. It had 3 ballast tanks from a ship that led to a tunnel that led to a underground brick kiln, which was built at the underground level because the Wunderlich's factory took all the clay out of the area, put the kilns at the lower area, and then later fill was brought in to cover it all up. The suburb changed names 3 times during that process, so people wouldn't really recognise where it was. I've proven the existence of the tunnels, the 3 sorts of tunnels that I was trafficked through. So the reason my father put the ballast tanks in there was also one in the laundry, is because he was instituting maritime law. And under maritime law, sex with children is legal. That's why you hear about children being trafficked in canals and ships. That you will see elites having houses like the Zorro Ranch. It's a really good example, the Epstein or Zorro Ranch. Its structure is, in some of the rooms, very much like a ship. There's port windows, there's wooden ceilings. One of the port windows in one of the real estate websites illuminates a painting of a child holding a baby, because obviously they like to get them pregnant very young. So all of that was already in place before I was even born. My father used me in his blackmail operations by trafficking me through those tunnels to all the other bunkers in the area, or the ones that were owned by his friends. The cult in Adelaide is called the Family. So when I refer to the family, and that's the global cult too, it's also called the Family. So I was trafficked. I was put with people that either were inebriated or drugged or barely conscious, and also with individuals who wanted to be filmed with me, because that's part of their structure. Is they get blackmail on each other, then they put up the ladder. They can't go up the ladder without being having this agreement between each other that they've got blackmail on each other. So then they help each other out in business. I was used in satanic rituals. One example was where a baby boy was unalived in the most horrific manner, and I won't go too much into it, but there are probably about 50 adults present when that happened. There were at least 10 of us children. We were all strapped down to chairs. We couldn't get up, but none of the adults got up to help this child. And the individual who unalived the child went on to have a stellar political career. And my father whispered in my ear while all this was going on that they were all then beholden to each other. They all had dirt on each other because none of them were helping the baby. Now, there was another family member who ran a baby farm. All of these poor, very underage girls, pregnant, were her maids. They were always miserable. When we went for family dues, we weren't allowed to speak to them. They just walked around utterly miserable. One of them caught up with my brother later in life and said they took her baby and she didn't know where he went. They didn't know what happened to him. That could be the child, the baby that I saw unalived. I'm not sure. But just an absolute horror show. Because I was used in theta psychic programming from infancy, I was used in the rituals as a go-between because the adults couldn't do it. They didn't know how, or they didn't want to take the risk. of communicating with these entities that they were pulling up. So I had to do it, which was horrific. And by the age of 8, I'd completely shut down my clairaudience because I just couldn't deal with it anymore. Hearing a demon is like scratching your claws down a blackboard, but it's painful. I don't know how any other way to describe it. It's actually physically painful, and the cold that goes through your body and the adrenaline from the fear is just overwhelming. So I managed to shut that down, but I'm still clairvoyant and precognitive, and I was used to psychic spy as well. I read auras, so I was used to psychic spy by my father. All things that I feel, not so great about, because I don't know what I was telling him, how that might have affected those individuals. Now I only ever use it for good. So I use it to help people, and I use it to teach people how to protect themselves from these entities, because people don't realize we live in a multidimensional space, even more multidimensional now, because the ley lines, which are the multidimensional connection, they're the channels of Akashic record, and all the other dimensions are you can interrelate with all the other dimensions on this planet through the ley lines and the portal spaces where the ley lines cross. They all went into permanent harmony time in 2024, in December of 2024. So we have now a situation where that interdimensional access is more prevalent. It's not just on the solstices and equinoxes. People need to learn how to protect themselves. So that's what I do now. That's why I believe I survived all of this. It's also to help people to realize the importance of the ley lines. They are so crucial. So apparently there's a biblical passage where they say the last fight's over the ley lines, and that, we're coming into, when they talk about Revelations 12, I'm not a biblical scholar. I did read the Old Testament and the New Testament when I was about 18, because I was curious what it was all about. From my understanding, Revelations 12, it's called an apocalypse, but it's actually just an awakening. In Greek, apocalypse means awakening. What we're going through now is this incredible awakening and an ascension process of the soul frequencies of humanity and many of the animals and, beautiful birds and things that we coexist with, and the earth's coming up in frequency. And what that means is the satanic age is dying. The entities that these idiots call up and they actually call them up and take them into themselves. They actually willingly allow themselves to be possessed for power and for money. So they're all helping each other out on a human level, but they've got these entities controlling them. Those entities cannot stand this new frequency. So what we are going to see now, and what we are seeing, is a lot of people in political spheres looking rather lost. They've lost their power, lost their charge, as a friend of mine says. They've lost their charge. So I think we're actually in the best place we've been probably for millennia. The satanic age, is going.
Yes.
Wow. I wanted to just harken back to the fact that, and I'm not, I don't know enough about it specifically, but enough to have a conversation, that there was some stuff that President Trump was doing that related to the White House and some of those, I guess, ley lines that were under the ballroom and, changing them over. And I don't know how that works, so forgive my language on explaining it, but that he was kind of shutting those down. And what I heard, and what I think we heard, Stu, was that it did have a larger effect on the rest of the world and the rest of the ley lines to shut down, I guess, the power, the ability. Do you know anything can you speak to this? Because,
that's amazing. That's the first I've heard that. That's amazing. So the Washington Monument, I believe, is right near the White House. Is that correct?
It's not far. Yeah.
That is a massive portal.
Yes.
The monument's right in the center of a huge portal, and you can actually see where the paths are. They're pointing out where the ley lines are going in. So for Trump to actually be aware of that is just gobsmacking. So if he can change the shift the frequency there, it will make a big difference, because there's those three. There's the triangle. There's the Vatican, which has a massive portal marked out in the you can see it. It's connected to a ley line that goes straight to the river, and all the ley lines are marked out. It's got a monolith in the center with a copper top, which is the most conductive element. it's so obvious. I think they call it the quadrangle or something. I can't remember what they actually call it. And underneath, I mean, that's a massive portal. So it's not just a circle on the ground, because these portal spaces tend to be spherical. But the Washington Monument's sitting right in there. I haven't looked at what they've got in London because it's so built up. It's kind of hard to see the portal there. But if he can change it, if he can shift the frequency there, that will definitely have a worldwide effect.
Well, I mean, we believe that this worldwide military alliance, Trump being the public figure of, as soon as Trump got into power, he started writing executive orders about saving children and child trafficking and stuff. And we know the military were trained to fight in tunnels, a big budget, 500 million or something like that in 2018, whether they were doing it before. So we believe this global infrastructure is being taken down, and has been for years. And part of the COVID years, we saw a lot of places locked down, certain places in Australia and around the world, as we believe the military is under there, taking all these trafficking rings out, you know. But and you used the word prevalent earlier. People don't understand how prevalent and widespread this trafficking is, because we've learned lately as well, Elisa and I, that I think the number we've heard is 35% of trafficking starts in the home, you know, by fathers, mothers, grandfathers, etc. So we believe good things are happening, but it's such a in-depth swamp. It's taken a long time to, you know, eradicate permanently.
Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, for some people, they can't get their head around.
It's very hard to get
just on the prevalence. Yeah, just on the prevalence in Adelaide alone, there was a 1938 mandate for a tunnel, trench or bunker at the back door, or within 20 feet of the back door of every house, every meeting place and every business. That's a lot of tunnels and trenches and bunkers.
Wow.
To the point that they had to make up new recipes for concrete. So that's in Adelaide. You know, Adelaide's a major trafficking hub. And, you know, now it's the state-sanctioned trafficking. Before it was the poor kids that were sent over from the UK, the stolen generation there, our Australian original people, and all of the orphans were just there to be used. It's quite horrific. You know, we're talking thousands of children. In my father's time, I think he went through, he certainly was responsible for hundreds, because my brother had to incinerate carved up children's bodies, you know, at least one a week for years.
Can I ask you about your brother? Was he treated in the same way you were? Did he have a different role? Like, and if you have other siblings?
So my brother Andrew, my sister Claire and my sister Ruth were all present when one of the most famous missing children's cases in my country, the Beaumont children, who were 3 children, 9, 7 and 4, taken from one family and were unalived and brought to my childhood home, Ackland Street, Edwardstown, in the bed of a car. Now, my brother was witness on the day to the blood and sand in the car. My 2 sisters were witness to seeing them in the boot, unalived. My father, on camera, said that happened. This was aired after he died, but he'd said it on camera 2 years before he died. But police still didn't do anything because he's an ASIA operative, he's a Secret Services operative, and he was protected. So those 3 children, again, it's one of the most famous cases. We know where they're buried, by the way, but you know, the law enforcement won't touch my father's 2 properties to exhume the remains of many children. So my brother Andrew is 19 years older than me. We actually just did a recent interview on Aquarius Rising Africa with a woman called Shanti, who's a friend of mine, where he basically backed up so much of what I've already said in so many interviews. Andrew was interviewing with mainstream media for well over a decade. Actually, it's coming up to 2 decades. But they just carve up the interviews and just represent him as this blubbering man crying about, you know, one of his abusers who was paroled recently and who is involved in putting away. Mainstream media just wants to make us look like idiots. Mm-hmm. So he's been able to come out and speak on a more alternative platform. I'm going to be hopefully getting him to to speak on a lot more of those platforms now. His experiences were a little different. He wasn't trafficked in the same way that I was, but he was certainly horrifically abused. And, well, I guess you could say he was trafficked because my father farmed him out to his pedophile mate, as is knowing that this man was, Anthony Munro, was a pedophile, and he was my brother's main babysitter. My father knew that he was abusing my brother because he caught them in bed together, or so he said. And then he blamed it on Andrew. Andrew was supposedly 9 and said Andrew was in love with his scoutmaster. He didn't do anything about it. So this is this sort of thing that my father said publicly, filmed, and that's on public record. So he didn't see anything wrong with that. Didn't do anything about it. Now my brother Andrew has said that actually wasn't true. Like my father just made it up, which is bizarre. So yeah, I mean, Andrew, one of the things that Andrew has shared that's absolutely monumental is that he was forced to burn these packages that were in the incinerator on a weekly basis. Now, one day the cat got into the packages, and so he looked at it. He was trained as a hunter from a very early age. He looked at what was in the package and recognized it as human. So then he took all of the packages out, and what he had was the small body of a human with no hands, no feet, no head. So he then surmised that all of the years that he had been doing this, burning every week something, a series of packages wrapped up in butcher's paper, by the way, because they were from the local butcher. There was a tunnel line that went from our house to a boys' home called the Glandore Boys' Home, where 106 boys went missing. And there was a butcher in between, which had a special sign on it, which was a King K with a 3-pointed crown, which was the sign for the locals to know where they could get their human meat. So that's how horrific this gets. And that doesn't even get into what the World Health Organization was doing with the doctors in Adelaide with Kuru experiments, which is a prion disorder. I can go into that if you like, but it's pretty horrible. Gene Decode's spoken a lot about the Kuru stuff. Yeah. So, there were 106 boys went missing a couple of streets away from us. There were 600 who went missing within 2.5 k's at the Goodwood Orphanage, and there were thousands sent over from the UK that just went missing. These stolen generation from the UK. So I saw there's a property at Stansbury on the Ork Peninsula that my father used to own that has the remains of the 3 Beaumont children, 3 wards of state that are in the same sinkhole with them. I was forced to go through a small tunnel into a sinkhole, a separate sinkhole that had a small fence of skulls that my father, that were all small. They weren't adult skulls. They were children's skulls that my father, they were his trophies. He took me in there to show them to me. So they need to be found, but police will just refuse to go there. They absolutely flatly refuse to go and exhume all of these remains, which would prove all the allegations that we've made. I mean, the fact that I've exposed the tunnels is enough. I've proven the bunker, that's enough, but they won't do anything about it. We have with the South Australian Police, there is a private company called Crime Stoppers that if you have any cold case information for the police, you have to go through this private organisation, privately owned, private organisation called Crime Stoppers, and they basically prevent any of that information actually getting through to the police. You can't go into a police station and give information about a cold case crime. They won't take your information. You have to go through this organisation that stops you from passing on the information.
So I'm wondering if obviously every country has its own jurisdiction and rules, right? But now we have this military alliance, and we have the worldwide saving of children and tunnel breakdowns. So I'm wondering if and how the alliance fits into this. I don't know that you know this, but I just put it out there because I have to surmise that Australia is a very big part of this takedown, and wondering if maybe things are already going on behind the scenes, or if it's next, or because from what I gather and from what Gene Decode says, this operation is is worldwide. You know, they're going into all different areas. So do you think any of this might be happening behind the scenes, you know, under the heading of crimes against humanity?
What's actually happening very overtly. So there was an inquiry called the Mulligan Inquiry, which was looking into the deaths of state wards which are orphans in my state. That was a bit of a whitewash, basically. But what happened was the man who presided over that, the man called Ted Mulligan, his son, Stephen Mulligan, then became quite a high-level politician. He actually got to the position of treasurer for the state. While he was the member for infrastructure, they went ahead with what's called the South Road Darlington upgrade, where they're actually tunnelling a massive tunnel that's actually taking out a lot of the tunnels. But the problem with that is it's done very quietly but overtly. So they're destroying all of the 1938 mandate homes, the homes that were present at the time when that government mandate was asking for these tunnels, trenches or bunkers to be in situ within 20 feet of the back door of every house, business place and meeting place. All of those heritage buildings, which are normally protected, are being taken out. And that's because they're the ones with the access to the tunnels, trenches and bunkers. What's very concerning is my childhood home hasn't been cleaned out yet. There are some people there that are obviously guarding it. My niece used to own it. She was murdered in 2024 in December on the solstice. So we're not, the red door is still there. I don't know if you've heard about the red door factor, but when you have child trafficking in tunnels, you have a red door on the front. I mean, that is also a feng shui thing, but it's pretty bizarre that they've still got the red door there. It's still red.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much of it is actually being done in South Australia, apart from them just hiding the evidence.
Yeah. I mean, further to what I said before, we did hear during the COVID years when we were sort of looking into all this stuff, listening to Dean Code and various other people, that the fact that the tunnels, I mean, we were seeing them lock down tower buildings and stuff and using it as COVID and this sort of stuff, but we hear they were underground trying to clean these out, and it was an absolute spider web of tunnels in Australia. Just a nest of depravity.
Yeah, exactly. You know, one of my abusers who had a bunker not far from where I grew up, he went bankrupt and had to sell his house. And I haven't had a chance to go and check out what's going on there, but he had a very large telecommunications tunnel going along out the front of his house as well. So, that could be a sign that it's been cleaned up, but I'm certainly not being told about it, unfortunately. Yeah. I'm just watching from making a lot of noise.
Also, we hear that, there's a lot of stuff going on in Antarctica, the Antarctic Treaty, that people say we're not allowed there and stuff like that. And the reason is, Australia is so important in this to the cabal is because of the location and it's, closeness to Antarctica, Yeah,
absolutely. And land down under, there's euphemisms there that would indicate, hell on earth.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a couple of ways to look at it too, because the military is not for the protection of the mission, right? And anybody involved that they may be saving, or, they're not going to announce, right? When they do this, they're going to keep it. It's not a civil crime, it's a crime against humanity. It's military tribunal worthy. So, excuse me, there may be, let's hope, that if some of these buildings are still standing, there's a reason they're allowing them to stand, because their testimony to what was really going on and proof, and perhaps the guarding is not guarding the bad guys anymore, but it might be guarding the good guys who are doing work. Again, I don't know. I don't think any of us know for sure, but it's very interesting how when we follow this military operation, in other parts of the world, once we hear about it, we kind of can assume that the heavy lifting and what has to be done has been done already, and they're not going to tell us while they're doing. Just like in COVID, I live in New York, and we saw the ships come in, for all the COVID victims, pulling into the harbor, but didn't know, it started seeping in like a little bit, if you were looking in the right places, that these ships had nothing to do with COVID. And it was all about, under Central Park and some of these other areas that they were rescuing children. So, we can just send out that, that collective positive vibration that's what's going on, and that we'll hear about it hopefully soon, that it's a past operation.
Yeah, I mean, the house next door to where I grew up was razed to the ground, and some beautiful people went in there and took footage, and you can see the tunnel.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've done everything I can possibly do to expose it. I've done all the research. It's not on the municipal records. I've proven it's all there, and all it really required in 2012 was for a major crime detective called David Sheridan to go in with ground penetrating radar, which he didn't do. And there's a letter that was sent to him by my father telling him to red flag us. So, and I've got that letter.
This was 2012?
2012.
Yeah. So that was a long time ago, like relative to the Trump coming in 2016 or 17, I should say, after the election, and the military operation that ensued. I mean, this is just so huge. So when people say, why are we still here? They don't understand how incredibly
you're trying to take down a 6,000-year-old death cult, right? In 10 to 20 years. It's not easy. It has to be done sporadically. This is why we're told in the Q drops that 80% minimum would be covert, and we'd know nothing about it while it was going on.
And people don't realize, we're talking about demonic entities here. We're talking about powerful and terrifying entities. They're not actually that dangerous if you know how to work against them. If you've survived a lot, as I have, and you learned how to send them back to where they belong, it's actually quite easy to get rid of them. And I'm hoping that, if this is going on in the background, that those people know what they're doing, because it's pretty dangerous.
Well, I would assume they do, that this is not unbeknownst to what the root of a lot of this is. There's the surface conversation of saving children, and then there's the deeper meaning of what the root of all this is. And I have to also assume that we're getting help, non-human help, because of the might and the strength of these entities and everything that's down there.
Yeah. I mean, Adelaide's just, again, I've pointed out all the symbolism in the video that I've done. I've also pointed out there's a book, an article in the Guardian newspaper called The Room of the Dead, where they actually talk about the Adelaide aristocracy and how they used to hunt humans. Anybody who was in the orphanages who didn't have anybody to speak for them was there for the picking, basically. And a lot of them were defleshed and anatomized so that they could be sold to various countries as skeletal remains for, medical specimens and those sorts of things. What was also going on with these poor children, and I was one of the ones that was experimented on, the World Health Organization employed a Dr. Roy Scragg and a Dr. Hamilton to experiment on children in Adelaide with prions, which it was Kuru prions specifically, also scabies prions. Now, prion disorders are Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, mad cow, Parkinson's, dementia, senility is also related to prion disorders. And prions are a misfolded protein that convince other proteins to misfold. I was experimented on 3 times through lumbar punch, tonsil, flesh to tonsil, and by another means, and I'm not sure what that was, because my father told me it had happened, but I don't remember what it was. I've since found out from a professor, Dr. Matthias Jacker, that children don't come down with prion disorders very often. They know that because of people like me, because of the experiments on us children. Many didn't survive. So the World Health Organization, that's all. I've done the research. I put a post out that went viral back in May 2022. That's all on record, that these doctors, this particular Dr. Roy Scragg, got an Order of Australia medal for his work studying prions for depopulation. And that is what precursored these vaccines, which and the spike protein mimics a prion. And this was all designed because they wanted to bring about what was in the Bible. My father told me about this when I was 10 years old. He just murdered a child in front of me. That they wanted to bring out about this zombie apocalypse. Now, in Adelaide, there is a particular prion disorder called Lewy body dementia, which has a zombie-like shuffle and a tendency to bite and full-on aggression. And we have a much higher incidence of that in Adelaide than we do, for our population than the world's population. And it's because of these experiments. So people unwittingly would have been going along and also buying infected meat. They infected the children, carved them up in the butchers, sold them on. And so they were also doing it that way through, they called it funerary cannibalism in Papua New Guinea, where they got the 75 cadavers that were Kura infected and sent them over to the Adelaide Medical Centre for these experiments. And that's all on public record as well. I mean, it kind of...
Can I just ask, Rachel, was that called the Maralinga experiment?
That's different. So Frank Walker. So that actually it's interconnected, because one of my father's victims, he did take the right leg off this child. He did other things as well, but through Frank Walker's book Maralinga, we learnt that they let go the nuclear testing, and they did it on days where the wind would actually blow the fallout onto pasture land, because that takes up strontium-90 readily, and then they pastured cows on it, which concentrate the strontium-90 in the milk. And then they gave it free to school children. And there's still, and Frank describes how the right femur would be removed from people who died from cancers and things as a result of this. And then they sent them back to the UK without the family knowing that they were taking those body parts and sending them off for dissection and to see, how far the experiment went, whether or not it was effective. So Adelaide's a testing ground.
And this is such a ridiculous question, and the point of this was to get rid of the population? Like, what, aside from the depravity, and I don't even know the word to use for doing this, what was their ultimate goal?
Well, I mean, it's hard to understand how these people think, but I'm from a bloodline family. I'm from the Kennedy line. I know that because my paternal grandmother did the family lineage, got back to a Catherine Kennedy and stopped. She didn't go any further. That's where she wanted to find. That's the name she was looking for. So we're from a bloodline family. And for those who know about satanic bloodlines, there are 13, supposedly, possibly many more bloodline families that think that they are the apex predators on this planet and they can do to us whatever they like. And obviously I'm from that lineage, but I certainly am not proud of it. I talk about this because people need to know. I know other survivors who are also from bloodline families who have done exactly what I've done and turned on those families and are trying to expose it as clearly and loudly and comprehensively as possible. But I believe that they just think they have the right to do it.
Okay. Yeah, there's no way for us to get into the psyche. I just was curious if there was, more overt discussion about why this was being done.
Well, with the orphans, my father told me, again, when I was about 10, that he was doing the world a favour because these children weren't wanted. And I now understand that to be eugenics.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a lot of discussion as well that these 13 families were actually taken out in 2017, right, which allowed Trump to go around doing his capitulation tour to get all these other countries on board, telling them what was going on. And we've been seeing this unfold never seen, but there's so many thousands and millions of people involved in this. They took the head off first and they've been cleaning up ever since. And it is just taking such a long time, but we understand why.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's plenty of my family who are still alive, unfortunately.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, maybe with there being 650,000 sealed indictments and you can have 99 names on each of those, we're talking over 60 million arrests potentially worldwide. People have been marked and tracked and are being monitored. So we can hope and pray and manifest that, certainly.
come to Adelaide.
I think they're already, I think this operation is many, many, many countries involved behind the scenes, all using their militaries. We've seen Monkey Works tracking the planes, what planes he can track, and we've seen worldwide militaries all working in each other's countries for the people that have got the eyes to see and are watching what's going on. So, we are very, very positive about this.
Yeah, and
I did put in a submission to the White House 3 times in 2020.
You did what?
I put in a submission to the White House to have my state looked into.
Yeah.
And my case looked into, and I did that electronically and by registered mail. So
I'm sure that's been looked at.
yeah,
I hope so.
It's also interesting, like if you think about the invasion, right? The invasion of all these illegals. And then the, oh, but look, it's just, army age men, where the women and children. So that would have been a brilliant way for the military to infiltrate those that had to do the fighting, the rescuing, et cetera, into all these countries throughout the world. Unbeknownst to the public, who also at the same time bringing forth the agenda of, the true illegal problem that we have that's, destroying the fabric of a lot of cultures. But that would make a lot of sense, right? If we track when a lot of that was allegedly supposed to have happened. So I think that, as Stu said, when you're talking about 80% being behind the scenes, that's a lot. That's a lot that could be going on or went on unbeknownst to us.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's so much evidence. I mean, the case that we have, my siblings and I, against our father in this family cult. I mean, it's obscene how much evidence we have. I've put through, I did an interview with a gentleman called Alex on Nuggets News on YouTube a couple of months ago, and went through all the evidence again, because we've got plenty of photographic evidence to prove that my father was involved with the Beaumont children disappearance, plus his admission that they were brought to our home. Yeah. And so it tells you how complicit the government is. Our police commissioner won't touch it. Our premier, Peter Malinauskas, stuttered on mainstream news that he wouldn't go to Stansbury to dig up these children without the police commissioner holding his hand. It's just crazy. It's just crazy.
Well, I'm sorry. What I was going to say is, you're saying this, and we're thinking of it from the perspective also, like, of the fear, because maybe these people are not fear, but they're complicit to what's going on, and probably guilty by association or directly guilty. But, it's kind of interesting too, if they understand the depravity, there's probably an element of fear, just that they know what they're dealing with and don't want to be involved. Like, if the system that you're dealing with, forget about like that they're complicit and they're just as evil. I'm sure there's a big handful of people that may not be participating that are not only afraid of the people who are participating, but know about these entities and don't want to be involved. So it's probably a multifaceted problem why everybody has turned away.
That is definitely multifaceted. Yeah, I was met with some really good politicians. One was able to help. And it's interesting, the current premier of my state was the police minister at the time that my father was finally investigated, but my father died 6 weeks into the investigation. So that's the end of that, which was very convenient. Mm-hmm. I believe it's complicity. I think it's fear. I think, some of them are really obviously puppets. Some of them just want to be pretty. It's really sad. It's really quite empty. There's not much behind the eyes, and they just like to take off their shirt in front of the cameras. It's sad.
Wow. Yeah. Now, when did your father die? I didn't want to call him a dad.
2017.
That's kind of interesting, but I'm not going to read too much into it. That's kind of interesting that he died in 2017.
Yeah.
And when I was 10 in 1983, he told me that these experiments, these Kuru prion experiments that he wanted, that him and these Adelaide doctors and the World Health Organization were trying to bring about this zombie apocalypse through, he told me he wouldn't see the result because he would die beforehand. He dies in 2017. I blew the whistle on this in 2018. And then a couple of years later, we've got a COVID spike protein that mimics a prion. He knew.
Yeah. Now, I've heard you talk about the Nazis and Mengele and, paperclip a little bit. Would you just want to talk about that for a few minutes?
Yeah. So for people who don't know, the Nazi scientists weren't killed off at the end of the Second World War. They were fossicked out to various countries with Project Paperclip. It was off to America. Project Matchbox, they came to Australia. I know several of Mengele's victims. I don't have any recollection of interacting with him myself, but my father used to talk of him. He used to reference him, and Satanists are obsessed with names. So Mengele, my father used to snigger about this. He thought it was hilarious. So I knew that name as a child without even having to do any history studies. I knew because my father would reference him quite frequently. So those experiments continued. So that MK Ultra program continued after the Nazi experiments. And what's really interesting is they were experimenting on people. The Romani gypsies have a particular eye colour called central heterochromia. Not all, but some. It's a very rare eye colour. The Celts have this. I have this. My mother has this. I think my father chose my mother to breed with for this psychic ability connected eye colour. So central heterochromia is where you have a different ring of colour around the pupil in contrast to the rest of the iris. So in the Hindu religion, people with this eye colour can see God and commune with angels and, see the future and all the rest of it. What the actual fact is that people with this particular eye colour that the Romani gypsies had, and which the Nazis were experimenting on them because of this, and Celts have in a higher concentration than the rest of the population, it actually allows you to see a wider range of the electromagnetic spectrum. So there is scientific, basis around the fact that people with central heterochromia, which I have, can see more of the infrared and more of the ultraviolet, which is where the interdimensional entities tend to exist within that bandwidth, or those two ends of the spectrum. So they did those studies in the war, then they came to Australia and they came to America, and they continued those studies on children with my eye colour or who had bloodline family connections, because those bloodline families also have weirder abilities. And I don't know if you guys have gone down the whole rabbit hole of the not the chimeras, hybrids. There's a hybrid factor with the Celts and probably the Romanians as well. So it's so complicated and so convoluted when you look at the whole way that it works. The obsession with twins was because of quantum entanglement, because you can take two twins and put them on opposite sides of the world and you can hurt one and the other one will feel it. So Mengele was obsessed with twins.
I remember hearing that about his twin obsession. Yeah, they even show it in a lot of movies, like they disclose his obsession with that.
Well, yeah. There's also a lot of discussion as well and research, isn't there, that we've been looking into, that Dr. Anthony Fauci has many ties to Mengele, and I think he was put front and center during COVID, but I think he's going to come right back into the narrative. It's actually May the 11th, isn't it, today? And the statute of limitations runs out for him to be indicted. However, under military law, they can take him down at any time. And I think if he doesn't get indicted today, Dave NewsTreason talks about this a lot. It's gonna accelerate the public discord into it all and get people talking more, and his time is coming, whether it's today or whether it's down the line. But he's been
same one though, because he changed face.
We
believe this online. This is all for public disclosure, right? Because we believe there's no way that the military was going to let any of these people hang out, and they're the infrastructure of the evil. They're not going to just say, all right, well, we'll get to them. So we all believe in our hearts and pretty much in our souls can feel. I'm sure you can, because it sounds like you have a lot more of that empathic ability, but I felt in, 2021, 22, I started feeling a difference. Like, no, something's missing. Bad.
Different profile, completely different ear. You cannot change the ear. It was a different man.
All of them. Look at all of them.
I know. And I do this all the time, and I say to my friends, "But can't you see it?" And they're like, "No."
Yeah.
But the ears don't detach.
Look at the nose. Look at the jaw.
So, Dr. Anthony Fauci is either in Guantanamo Bay or somewhere else. They've already hung him from his neck. And what we will see is actors, clones, those being arrested, for the public disclosure of a military operation that's been going on behind the scenes. But it's very, very positive, although there is still a lot of dirt to clean up, and people to be rescued.
Well, that's certainly given me hope along the way, because I'm not seeing the same person.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Well, if anyone thinks that was Joe Biden for 4 years.
Oh, for God's sake.
Yeah. Well, if they
the
could
change shape.
Yeah, exactly. And he kept changing shape because there was meant to be 4 different actors playing the part. So if they can put a man in who's not the man as president for 4 years, or whether that was the military white hats doing that under this continuity of government devolution operation, if they can do that, they can replace anyone. And we've seen it. So many people out there look different. So that's definitely something to be positive about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just bizarre, absolutely bizarre. And then you've got the people that clearly aren't alive anymore, like the Pope was obviously gone for a long time before the announcement. I personally don't think that this regent that's getting around is the same individual.
No. Well, we saw the Pope disappear, didn't we? He came out to the balcony, turned round, and he disappeared. It was CGI, and that was in 2020, wasn't it? 2021?
Yeah, that was a while ago. And, I also don't think any of this is by accident. For those who have the eyes to see, they're telling us very clearly.
Yeah, they're making it more and more absurd so that people pay attention and get involved and stand up.
Yeah.
So I want to be mindful of your time. So are there other things that you'd like to talk about, or because I want people to also understand, how they can support in any way, shape, or form the efforts, whatever shape that takes. So, how do we support you? And
well, I just say one thing on, the child trafficking that is very overt now in your country and mine is the CPS and DCP, the supposed child protection agencies. So I just ask those that are beholden to, mandatory reporting, to really think about what they're doing. Because when you mandatorily report somebody that you think is a parent that might be a little bit lax, that can actually relegate that child to then be sexually trafficked by the foster care system. And they can die. In fact, children are 6 times more likely to be sexually abused in Australia in the foster care system, and more likely to die than they are at home. So that is a big bugbear of mine, because this is state-sanctioned trafficking. What happens is someone will either be known to be a pedophile, so a person might report, my husband's abusing my children. They will then take the children from the protective parent, put the protective parent in a mental institution, take the children, traffic the children, and use that leverage against the pedophile father. Now, I'm not saying we don't point out that people are pedophiles, but we need support for the mothers and the protective parents, fathers or mothers, that are having this happen to their children. It's an absolute nightmare, and that's unfortunately still going on. As much as I would like for it to be going away, it's still happening in my state. It's still unfortunately commonplace.
Yeah. So where people that have been through, similar things to you, that haven't got the courage to speak up, that are feeling alone out there, where can these sort of people go for help?
Oh, that's such a loaded question. It's so hard to know. It's so hard to know. I mean, therapy is often re-traumatizing.
Yeah.
So one simple thing that people can do, because people get so depressed And when you're depressed, you don't seek out sunlight. You don't necessarily go out in nature. You might not feel like playing with your pet, but you've got to push yourself to make yourself do those things so that you will feel joy. And if you can do that for 5 minutes a day and then lengthen that period, we get so bogged down in the trauma that we can't escape it. And you have to be your own advocate. You can't expect that you're going to go off to a therapist and they're going to fix it for you. You have to fix it for yourself. I had to fix it for myself. Nobody came along with a magic wand. You can reach out to people like me, but there's very little we can do. I mean, we all have to heal in our own way. I can give suggestions. I know some good trauma therapists, and they're good because they've gone through the trauma themselves.
Right.
I can thoroughly recommend Max Lowen, Unbroken.global. She's my best friend. She's an incredible psychotherapist. She was trafficked and abused under the Vatican. If anybody knows what it's like to be abused, it's Max. That's someone I would recommend that people go to because she is so good. But most therapists that have not been through this sort of trauma don't get it, and that's one of the hardest parts. If you have a lot of physical health problems and you've been raped as a small child, sometimes what happens is the chakras swap around. So you get what's called chronic reversed polarity, and that can bring up multiple sclerosis symptoms, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. You need an energy therapist for that. Going off and getting medication for chronic pain and chronic fatigue, like I did for many years until I realized what was actually going on, didn't help me, that's for sure. It made things worse. Going and seeing a good healing energy practitioner will help that. Acupuncture can help that. So those are a couple of things that I would suggest. There are a lot of every illness that a person has in the physical body, usually it relates back to trauma, whether it's genetic trauma through the bloodline or it's physical trauma through the body because of what's happened to them as a child. So if you look at it from that perspective, anything in the body can be healed as long as it's not, dismemberment. You can heal. So people taking charge of their own healing, I think, is the most important thing. You can go to a healer, but you have to give permission to heal. You have to want to heal. You have to give up the victim status. Being a victim can be, you can get a lot of pity, but who wants pity? You really just want to be the best, strongest, healthiest healthiest self that you can be.
Yeah.
Stick it up to your abusers. Be the best that you can be, and then help people. Become a helper.
I mean, the mind is an absolutely powerful tool, isn't it? Which is why these creatures try to destroy the mind of their victims, initially, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. So the best thing to prove to them that they're wrong and they haven't done a good job is to work to heal and then start to thrive, because it really annoys them.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, you mentioned Max. This is your friend who's she's been through, horrible stuff, but now she's helping. Does she do interviews? Because I find it fascinating. There's so many therapists out there. My daughter is starting grad school. She wants to work in trauma. As much as she thinks she had a rough childhood, trust me, she hasn't. And so granted, she could probably help a lot of people who have what I would call, one-offs. They had this experience, they had that experience, and I'm not minimizing, people who've had any trauma. But the point is, there's no way, no matter what, that she can understand the kind of situation that you've been through and so many have been through, and to help those people heal. But someone like Max, if that person can get their voice out there even more, because there are so many therapists, that's who needs to train these therapists as best they can, less the experience of going through it, so that they truly understand how to help people. And it sounds like we need so many more of those people. So all that to say, if she's available, as part of this world that we're trying to expose and heal, we would love to have her on. And
I'll mention, she did an interview recently with Man in America. You're probably aware of him.
Yeah,
so she's a big voice. She's absolutely blown up recently. So she's been working away in the background, like doing interviews. She interviews people as well. So she's been doing a lot of work, and I'm just so proud of where she's come from, where she is now. So she's one of the best voices for this in the world. And my other dear friend, Kathy O'Brien, you would have heard of Kathy.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think we're in contact with Kathy, aren't we? We'd love to have Max on the Monday Respect show. Kathy as well, obviously.
Yes.
Kathy's done a lot of work with Mark in the past anyway. So, yeah, we're definitely looking at all these things, but that'd be wonderful. I just want to say, you know, talking about the mind is a powerful tool, that it is. People don't understand the power of nature and just getting outside and getting the sun on your face and the wind on your skin and sitting quietly in nature away from everyone and listening to the birds and the good creatures, you know. It's essential, because I mean, even when I was driving a taxi a while back, we used to pick up a lot of people, the elderly generation, and some of them you only ever used to pick up and take them to the doctors and back. That was their life. But the other people that used to get out and go for a walk and take them somewhere, or go and visit their friend, or go and get their hair done and stuff, they were much more vibrant in life because they were getting out of the house every single day.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, nature is the greatest elixir, the greatest healthful, you know, grounding, getting your feet out of the ground, putting your bottom on the ground is so healthy, because it helps to align the chakras. It helps to balance out your aura. The aura gets like Swiss cheese. It gets all these holes in it when people are around electromagnetic frequencies, when they have too much fluoride in their system, they don't eat the right kind of foods. And that's where these, you know, otherworldly attachments get in and cause problems, or energy leaks out. Being out in nature heals that. Being around large bodies of water helps heal that, because the negative ions plug up the holes. So these are just layman's terms for those who aren't, you know, fully aware of what the aura is. But basically, it's the soul that doesn't fit in the body, and we have to take care of it. But we're not taught this at all. We're not taught about, you know, how to keep our physical body healthy by keeping our soul healthy. So, and that part of that is also communing with animals, with nature, with you know, watching bees fly around. That can be incredibly positive and make you feel really happy. The frequency that they release, bees hum at a certain frequency that's incredibly healthful. So people who have chronic illness go and sit next to a beehive. As long as the bees aren't feeling aggressive that day, they can get a really good healing. Yeah. You know, if bees are having a bad day, not so good. But there's so many different ways that you can avail yourself of healing through nature. You know, it's incredible. And that's one of my elixirs. Nature, the animals that I had as a child, and my love for my mother was what actually got me through, and my spirituality.
I'll just say something very quickly to that, because I was working out in the country a couple of years ago at a little house, and he had 2 beehives, and one of them was absolutely beautiful hive, but he was moving them about, and you can only move a beehive about a couple of feet at a time. Then you have to leave it so they can find their sort of navigation. Then you have to move it a little bit more. But one of the beehives, they were absolute bastards in it, and he had. Right, he had absolute problems. He had to wear a proper bee suit and everything, and even then he didn't like doing it. And it was because of the queen in there, because he said he had a really bad queen in this. So you can see how this just reverbed out, because one of these beehives, you could stand next to it all day long, and they were lovely. You'd have them on your hand and stuff. And this other one, you wouldn't want to go anywhere near it. And everyone should be taking natural honey, because it is one of the best substances out there. And most of the supermarket honey you buy out there, it's got no goodness in it at all. If you can find local
bee. I had a conversation with somebody yesterday about that. In the supermarket, you can't eat this stuff. It's full of sugar. So the bees were probably on a negative ley line, a negatively affecting ley line, and they're doing their work, and they were not happy about being moved. So certain insects are attracted to negatively affecting ley lines because they actually shift the frequency and balance it out. Ants, termites, they're all attracted to the negatively affecting ley lines. I bet you anything that's what they were actually doing. And that's why they were annoyed that their work wasn't finished yet.
Yeah, you might be right. Yeah. Well, do you know what? This has been absolutely wonderful. We love you. You are another warrior in this fight. I personally will be sending you a little bit of distant Reiki healing over to the other side of the earth, whether it's round or flat or whatever. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on, Rachel, and you're welcome back any time. And if Max does want to come on and you want to come on with her or anything like that, you both be very, very welcome.
Oh, that'd be lovely. I'll let her know. Thank you.
Elisa, you're muted.
My dog was barking. Thank you for all you do and your bravery. And yes, I'll be sending light to you all the time. Lots of love. And we're here. We're a platform. So anybody that you feel would make a difference to be on our show, please, we have an open door, whether it's a forum group setting or it's individual. But thank you so much.
Yeah.
God bless you.
We've got, like I said before we came on in the back room, we do have the occasional growler in our chat, but most of the time our chat is absolutely beautiful and they're sending you a lot of love, and it's wonderful. So I've done a little new outro, part of what Mark uses for his, and I've put all Mark's links next to it for where you can donate to certain things. I haven't got the transcript yet, so rather than me typing it out, I'm going to see if Mark's got it, and I will put it in the Monday Respect show every week. But yeah, Rachel, thank you so much. Have a lovely sleep. It's your bedtime now, isn't it?
Yes.
Thank you so much,
Good
guys.
night.
I really appreciate it. Lovely talking to you.
Love, not fear, people.
Yeah.
Take care. Bye.
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 I will be the last to fall. I won't shed a tear for them to see. I won't have your name to call. 'Cause I will be the last to fall.